All right, tonight we explore the topic of the explosive Pandora leaks. 12 million confidential financial records were leaked in its wake, exposing wealth stashed abroad by world leaders. Among them, President Uhuru Kenyatta's family. Client 13173, as known by the Swiss bankers, the Kenyatta family are said to have more than 3 billion in their offshore accounts. Kenyan media and pundits took the cue from there, and this leads to discuss whether these financial instruments were legal. Was the point these leaks, however, a legal question or an ethical question? And have these financial services simply facilitated corruption by top government officials over time? Well, critics therefore claim the mainstream media has been complicit on its coverage of the leaks and only openly started discussing these matters after President Kenyatta himself sent a press statement. We have questions tonight, as we always do on this program. For the first time since the leaks were released is John-Allan Namu, the co-founder of African Censored. Thank you for making time to do the program. Patrick Gathara, curator The Elephant. Karibu sana. And of course, for the second time, Victor Bwire, director at the Media Council of Kenya. Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming to the program. Let's start just from the beginning and with you, Namu. So this, it's what, more than 7 days, 10 days running. This story has received, its share of media coverage, if you like. From where you sit first, before we go to the reactions and the real content of this thing, would you say the media has given this a fair coverage, or you are slightly disappointed?
Well, I'll be honest, James. In the first 24 hours since the leak was published, I was quite disappointed. I felt very, very lonely as a Kenyan reporter, myself and Purity Mokami and all of us who were involved in reporting this leak. Felt very lonely and a bit confused about how what was at the time the biggest story on the globe was going unreported in the Kenyan media by and large, with the exception of tweets from reporters such as yourself, and other people who are kind of on the beat with what was going on around the world with respect to the Pandora papers. So I was. And it was a very slow start. And what for me was strange was that the marker for the uptick in coverage, at least from where I sat, was when President Kenyatta responded to the publication of these leaks with a statement that he made, I think it was on the 4th of October, right? So I asked myself the question, how is it that there's no reporting about the leaks themselves, but reporting about a response to the leaks? That was in the initial sort of like 24 to 48 hours since that story broke. Over time, I think there was a lot better coverage with some explanations, or rather some attempts at explaining what the leaks were all about, who was involved in Kenya, what the implications were, and then slowly it started to inform somewhat of a national discussion, which I really don't have any opinion about the quality thereof. I wasn't involved in driving those conversations, and I think by and large, the important questions were being asked. But those first 48 hours for me were like the twilight zone, honestly. I felt like I had been left twisting in the wind, if I'm honest, myself and my colleagues. And I hope that that's not something anybody has to experience.
John, there's obviously the next question of the understanding and sort of the angle that the media has taken generally, correct me if I'm wrong because you're observing it as well, to sort of discuss the offshore accounts and the legality of it all, and try to explain the financial instrument of it all as a matter of public knowledge, provide public knowledge. You've spent a bit of time looking at these records and looking at the point, and obviously the point that you've taken to report these. Was this a question of the legality of it all, or was it a question of ethics? And from where you sit, do you think the public need to be informed about the ethic bit of this point, or the legal question why these things are legal and we should have them?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. Where even, and I think that interesting that I referenced President Kenyatta's statement, because that's where the what he said, that's where the crux of the matter lies, right? That it is both a legal issue and an ethical one. Legal in the sense that what we uncovered, all 600 reporters who reported on the Pandora papers, what we uncovered was the infrastructure that has been used in the past and presently by people who want to spirit money away from their countries, who want to launder money, who want to, or rather use this for illicit financial flows. That infrastructure and the ownership structures therein are what we should be talking about. So that's both a legal and an ethical question, depending on which border you're sitting inside of. In Kenya, of course, it's not illegal to have an offshore entity or an offshore account, but when it becomes a person of the status of a president or a political elite in Africa, and I think we also need to be a bit honest about what political elite means in Africa as opposed to other places in the world, where people who don't have title usually have a lot of influence on what happens in the politics of a country. What it means when the political elite, when the economic elite of a country choose to invest in secrecy jurisdictions. But I think the finer point of this was also missed. It is not that they had accounts, and we never said any of that in our reporting. We talked about foundations and trusts, companies essentially, right? And the uses of those companies was very difficult to establish, with the exception of one, which was Hawking International, that was linked to Muhoho Kenyatta, as well as Milran International, that was linked to Uhuru Kenyatta's sisters, Nyokabi and Christina Pratt. The nature of the setting up of those companies is something that we need to look keenly at, right? So it's not illegal to own an offshore entity. But I ask you this, if you were a rich person in this country and you wanted to buy an apartment in central London, as you do as a rich person, why would you go through the trouble of going through a Swiss bank to reach out to a Panamanian enabler, to register a company in the British Virgin Islands, and then register other companies where the ownership of that company that you registered in the BVI, which has almost basic ultimate beneficial ownership laws, have the shareholding of that company then split into two separate companies that you then register in Panama, yet another secrecy jurisdiction. And to top it all off, have nominee directors appear on the company registry. Like, if you're a rich person, the question is, why go through all of that, to be able to buy a property or to register an entity? What is the point? Is there a tax benefit to that? I think not, right? So those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves and ask of our leaders, so that they can come out clearly about this. It's not enough to say that it is not illegal, right? It's not illegal to own a bar, right? It's not illegal to run those kinds of businesses. But if you are doing things in a certain way, it poses a question about your motivations for doing so. And I think that's really what we're asking when you think about the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, beg your pardon.
Okay, great. I'll come back to you, John. Let's get this, into operation-wise, and I'll have you, Victor, to go first. The level of criticism came in fast and thick. Immediately, the investigations were on. From where you sit, were they justified?
A number of people who criticize, or our media critic, rarely have time to engage with the media. That's the first thing. Two, they're still stuck with the media of the big five. So that if something has not appeared in Standard, Nation, Star, or People, then media in Kenya has not covered it. Yet we are the same people who are saying the media landscape in this country has changed, and it's no longer the big five anymore. So that also is something that we must accept, that the media we are talking about, the niche media, has changed the landscape in this country so big time that when you miss to fall and say media is not covered, then you have missed it, the whole point. Because why I'm saying so is John-Allan Namu is a Kenyan journalist accredited in Kenya. He did the story. So which other media are we talking about? It's John-Allan Namu who did the story, who is a Kenyan journalist, who is accredited. And one of the studies we've just done, which in fact John was one of the correspondents, is that in fact globally it's established that investigative journalism is moving away from Liberty Media. And we have now nearly 61 investigative centers in Africa that are running investigative journalism that are not mainstream media. That is the trend. So if that is the trend, and I've just done a study and established that, and that's the play, then you obviously start seeing that, one, because of fears, you are aware that even this year, most media companies in Kenya missed insurances for their businesses because media has become a high-risk business. And that's a major thing, because media is a business. And that is pushing people to self-censorship in a way that is not even a professionalism, it's not ethics, it's not what. But people, I mean, this is a fact. There are so many stories that people don't touch, not because they don't think it's a public interest, not because, but people are playing safe for obvious reasons. And for that reason, sometimes, like John said rightly, people pick time to understand and contextualize stories before they pick them, for them to leave. Because we are aware of media houses. In fact, there's one media house that is just remaining with one case. If they slapped that case, they're closing down. So these are general fears that are real. I mean, one of the biggest problems is high defamation suits against media houses in this country.
Yes.
You are just aware that just before President Uhuru became the president, he had the highest number of cases against media houses in this country. He had sued almost every media house. So those are risk analyses that people do when you talk about safety and protection of journalists. Those are some of the issues that come on board, that you must look at the risks that are involved in a particular, because it's purely, in addition to editorial discretion, there's also other interests that Nation, Standard, and others, I mean, Star, People, and People Daily look at. So that's why in the initial stage, this was a story that was done by 600 journalists elsewhere. Now, to expect that immediately they release today, all Kenya media houses will run with it was over expecting, because this is a story that we are not involved in. So just to pick and go and either plagiarize or reproduce without also contextualizing and understanding and localizing to what the needs are was to expect. Right. So it must take time so that people then understand some of these things are not easy as people think. And so to me, and gradually people have picked up. I mean, like John said, it's the coverage and the discussion around that topic, because contextual. John, you want to be very frank to yourself. The amount of trainings we have done in illegal financial flows, trafficking, international, is higher than any Kenyan journalist, an average Kenyan journalist. You must appreciate some of these things are not easy as specializing as it is. So let's not be so fast to make John that if we produce a story today and others have not done it, then these other ones are not doing anything. People must understand and contextualize and also own some of those things.
Patrick, do you accept
no, I think that was quite a lengthy defense of what I think is the indefensible, to be quite honest.
We are not defending, it's just my position. And you can have your position, I have my position. You know.
I think John is very right. In the first day there was, I mean, I was shocked. I think lots of people were shocked. And I think it's not really good enough for mainstream press to say, well, somebody else on Twitter reported it. You know, that's not an excuse. They should have done it. They've got the audience. But I think more than that, it's the tone that they took when they did actually start reporting it that for me was very disappointing. I think lots of them took the sort of legalistic approach to it. Is this legal? You know, we even had...
What's the problem with that?
Because it's missing the point. The point isn't about its legality.
Point according to who?
You know, the point is, the problem with having politicians and high-ranking people with access to our wealth, being able to hide their financial affairs is the problem. That is what is being highlighted by this. You know, it's not so much that Kenyatta did something illegal. No, I don't think anybody says that. You know, And so coming back and saying, oh, well, they did nothing illegal, you're not really reporting anything. What's being highlighted is the problem that comes with them being able to hide it. And the fact that is the extent to which they go to hide the fact that they own it. That's what we should get our alarm bells ringing. We had a discussion even before this, the Pandora Papers thing came, about wealth declarations. In fact, I thought we would be jumping on and saying, look, this is the thing that we've been talking about. We've got MPs, we've got public officials who file wealth declarations every 2 years, but they're kept secret. We don't know what they put in there.
We don't have access to that.
We don't have access. And that's, for me, again, here's the point, is they are hiding it. And in the same way, when they go outside and set up these offshore companies, they're hiding their wealth. They're doing the same thing here. But you don't find people making these linkages. We don't have guys explaining to people that this ethical question over whether somebody who has access to the public purse should have such opaque affairs of his, that for me is what our media should have focused on, and I think they completely missed it.
Okay, I want to come back to the operational question and to the big question that you already know, that maybe the last 10 years the media experience has really been gutted, right? And it's on record. And the media experience and media management by this government has been extraordinary. Has that had something to do with this? And can we make an admission on that and move that forward, move the conversation forward? Taking a short break. When I come back, let's delve into that.
For a classic bouquet at 899 shillings for 30 days to enjoy 64 channels. If it's premium, it's on Classic. Classic Bouquet, the taste of class. Premium content on Star Times. Subscribe today.
Thank you for calling Tononoka Group. My name is Chuma. How can I assist you today?
Hi, Shuma. My name is Karis. I heard about the Tajirika na Chuma program and I would like to know more about it.
Tajirika na Chuma is a world-class loyalty scheme available at Tononoka Group. You earn points for every purchase worth 100,000 Kenya shillings and above. These points can be redeemed on your next purchase or you can accumulate them for future use.
How do I join?
Go to our website, tononoka.com and register.
It's done, huh? I would like to place an order today.
Asante Karis, your order has been booked for delivery. You will get a notification on your phone regarding the number of points you've earned from this transaction. Terms and conditions apply. Tajirika na Chuma.
Tononoka Group, at the core of every construction.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there.
Selena!
It's great seeing you getting so much value for your money.
Well, it's important to save as much as you can.
You save everywhere. Except for here. This is where you're throwing money down the drain.
How?
On these cleaning products.
Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilet. Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
Switch to DigiSmart, your standard chartered. Fanya mambo vi smarter. Jipange na Visa Gold debit card. Dani ya app. Ama ukitaka inaweza kuwa delivered.
Una save more, una do more. There's more for you and you know. Standing orders, transfers umuhumu na majuni free. Salo, processing. Kila mwezi ni zero. Ukidipozi mapema unapata cashback ka hero.
Shopping guide. Set a budget. Don't shop when you're tired, hungry, lonely, bored, or upset. Glovo. You order, we deliver in minutes.
Get unlimited free deliveries for food, groceries, and Glovo party orders. Subscribe to Glovo Prime for only 300 shillings per month. Terms and conditions apply.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this rehabilitation center.
Or you mean welcome to jail?
Well, yes. It may seem like that to you at first.
What, am I the only one?
Looks like I've been replaced by a new rebel. With a cause or without a cause?
Princess, I want to go with you.
No, relax. Don't worry. I'll just see you later.
You sure?
Of course. Charlie. Charlie, stop it.
Oh, there they are.
Ni rahisi, buy ama redeem na ushinde na furahia na Optiven.
Welcome back. Welcome back. You're watching With All Due Respect. And when we took the break, we were trying to understand the nature and the complexity and how much time it took John-Allan Namu and team to put this together, and why there was a slow uptick of this sort of reporting. And we have made headway. We have headway. Victor has offered what Gathara says, a lengthy defense of the indefensible, with all due respect. The question here is this, and we just took a break on this. When we were criticizing the media coverage of this and the question of who the mainstream media even is, who the mainstream media would be, at what point do we say there's something that has happened in the media space, defamation as you're talking about, and targeting of individual journalists, as John would know, and people have lost jobs, people have been demoted, people have been fired across the board, right? And it's not been an easy economic environment for the media as well. John, just for you, in a minute, just to lay this conversation, from where you sit, with your independence, you obviously sit in a much better position editorially to make such decisions that becomes very complex, say, for someone like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so look, Smart, it's both. It's a double-edged sword if you think about it this way. Yes, I'm no longer, in a media house, in a legacy media house, right, that covers me, or I have to report to certain people. I'm the one who sets, alongside our team, sets the editorial agenda for Africa Uncensored, right? Yes. So that's a good thing, right? However, think about it this way. We are also a media house on our own in a country where people, especially the elite, can be extremely litigious, right? To the extent that our defamation suits in Kenya are breaking records in terms of the kinds of awards that are being given to people who are aggrieved. Now, that's a story for another day, but it tells you the amount of risk that we have to go to and the lengths that we have to go to be able to report these things. Now, media houses, legacy media houses, the Nation Media Group, the Standard, and what have you, indemnify themselves against the risks of defamation through insurance, right? It doesn't mean that now, because they're covered by insurance, then they can go and let their reporters say whatever they want. However, that gives reporters and the editorial team a certain blanket of security that allows them to go and report, the things that ought to be reported, right? Victor made a point about commercial interests. I agree. Commercial interests, abound everywhere, right? However, we seem to have become okay with sacrificing what is the public interest in doing these kinds of stories on the altar of this commercial interest, which becomes more and more vague every day. Right. So I remember there were two reporters at KTN when I had left who called me while I was working now, where I am now, to tell me about how their story about Kenya Power and Lighting had been scuppered and shelved for weeks, because there was a certain person in that media house who had been reached out to. And this is a parastatal, surely. I mean, and this is a parastatal that affects all of us. And yet, that kind of reach into our newsrooms it seems to be okay in this day and age. Right. It is wrong, Victor, it's wrong to anybody who's watching out there to allow for these kinds of interests to control editors, even without a phone being picked up. That's a serious thing. That's a serious sign that our democratic space, our space for freedom of expression is shrinking. If editors themselves will self-censor, if reporters know, even just by looking at a brief, that they can't touch a story, that's a serious problem. And so when we complain about the media not being fast on the take for a story like this that has been reported worldwide, what we're really saying is that we are concerned that when it comes down to what we ought to be reporting on behalf of the public, then the media is not going to be doing its job.
Right.
And might I add this point? We are going into what is perhaps the most consequential election since the 2002 general election, right? If we maintain the status where we can only go this far and no further, and not really push the boundaries, not of breaking the law, but in expressing our freedom of speech, freedom of the press, in reporting what is right, then we are going to find ourselves in a situation where the public themselves audit us, blame us, and crucify us on the street, not just at on Twitter, on the street, for the things that we didn't say or didn't do, for our sins of omission. I might be sounding fatalistic right now, James, but we all know what happened in 2007 when the media was accused of doing certain things, right? Yes. I was in the field somewhere in Busia, and myself, Judy Kaberia, and Isabella Kituri were nearly killed by people who felt a certain way about our media. That's how closely regarded the media is. So how much worse if we don't do our jobs? That's the question that I'm asking. And you might choose to disagree with a story, you might choose not to publish it and what have you for editorial reasons. But if you're editorializing on the basis of fear, then we have committed a cardinal sin, which is that we are not publishing and we are not being damned, as Joe Carthy used to say.
Great. And Victor, isn't that the point, though? The self-censorship, and just to pick up from John's point of view, with all due respect, that the boldness, if you like, that was there in the media before, the things that would have done, reporting about Anglo leasing, reporting about, holding politicians into account and those who hold public office into account, when other interests sort of meshed with all these things, from where you see it, do you see that that is an editorial problem in the long run? Maybe not now.
You see, James, I worked as an investigative reporter for Nation for years, and an undercover journalist, so it's not something new to me. I was here in this room, so sometimes we also appreciate, and there's nobody who is defending anybody. I mean, I don't run a media house, I don't own a journalist, so I'm not defending anybody. But we reach a stage where sometimes we want to appreciate the environment in which sometimes colleagues have gone to great length to write serious stories. Which I mean, we look at them every day, and colleagues are doing fantastic work. So I wouldn't say that self-censorship, but there are challenges that are there that we must appreciate. That as people work, different environments allow different things to happen. I'm one of those people. I have nearly 100 students I've taught in journalism who are working in various media houses, and I get irritated sometimes when I see how they are writing, and I think they could have done better.
Right.
And sometimes, but you push, and I can tell you many times, our journalists, and because of resources, because of other things, would want, I tell somebody there's a story and this and that, send me a document, send me a document. And then you want, but I've given you points so that then you follow up, and sometimes you get irritated, but again, you go back and also ask that we have seen one or two things. But I can tell you we have, because I look at, and this point I've made it, go to BBC Nairobi Bureau, go to CTGN, go to Voice of America, go to DW. Three-quarters of reporters, they are Kenyan journalists. I mean, our colleagues who left some of this newsroom. Go to what Namu is doing, Alexia Mwada, they are Kenyan journalists. And sometimes you start appreciating the environment, the impact the environment has on people, and the working environment and productivity of people. I can tell you, I know colleagues who, there are still newsrooms in Kenya simply because they have bills to pay. you know, but you have to survive. Some of them love journalism and will tell you survive. Look at even averagely, in a month, we don't miss to get 3 or 4 journalists resigning from newsrooms. I mean, and they are not changing their profession, but they are just changing working environment. That tells you something. So that's why sometimes as a media student, because I learn a lot, I talk to some of them, I hear some of them. Sometimes it's difficult. I get sometimes documents in our office. Somebody thinks you'll help. I have this documentation, I have this story, but I can't. Would you get somebody? So those are things. Those are things we see. So sometimes and even look at some of these people we are talking about. Who knows who owns this media in Kenya? Because when we talk about this offshore, we talk about black cap, there's a study that has been done even who owns media in Kenya itself, the media itself, the directorship of media. Nobody knows even in this country. I mean, even the operating name. So when media itself is even a shadow business, it also becomes, it also needs a Pandora. But we need to.
I think that Victor is pointing to, and I agree with him when he talks about the fact that we've got many journalists who seem to excel when they leave legacy media, but not as much when they're within it. You know, and that tells me something. The problem is not that our journalists can't do things.
It's not quite true. John is excelling, and he excelled when he was in the media as well.
Yeah, but I mean, as he said, if you go around and out there, you don't find the sorts of practices or keeping away from these sorts of stories happening when they are in these other media houses. That tells me the problems are internal. The problems are actually within the structures that we have within our media and how our media itself, the culture that it has within it. You know, so when people are talking about the fear of being sued, you know, and I ask, all right, what do our laws say? To a large extent, they give our guys leeway, but everybody is afraid of the cost of suing. You know, and my question is, we've got media council here, we've got media houses. Why aren't we pushing then for the changes in law? You know, if the law is a problem, why aren't we pushing for those changes? You know, and again,
that is the thing. As you make the point, though, and because I took it for a break, there's plenty of cases and plenty of scenarios where journalists have been sued, you know, defamation and whatever it is, and millions of shillings, you know, have been paid. And so that's...
But that's my point, is that is itself a threat to the entire enterprise. And what I would say is if media got together and they said, look, this, I mean, we saw this, it's not the first time. If you remember during Moi's time, they used to do the same thing to bookstores, you know, and things. So if we got together and we said, no, this is where the threat lies, so then we have to ask, what do we do about it? What are the changes that are required? We don't just sit back in it. I'll just say 2 points very quickly. The first is the fact that our mainstream press was not involved in this big leak.
Yes.
Where you have other 600 journalists, huge media houses like the Washington Post, etc. around the world involved, they should take it as a big question mark. And I think they should be asking, if I'm a nation, I would be asking, why weren't we involved? What is it that they were running away from us? If you remember, I think it was the Panama Papers that they were in that consortium. This time they weren't. The second thing is, very quickly, it's not just about when you're looking at the failures that the Pandora's Papers exposed, it's also about where the money is going. And I think that we actually miss an opportunity to discuss the infrastructure that John is talking about, you know, which is really peopled by people from the West. It is companies from the West. It is consultants from the West. And the money ends up buying assets in the West. You know, and we need to get back and say, when these guys come to us shouting about corruption, you know, what are they themselves enabling? What are they doing?
With all due respect, I have to take a short break.
Those are the stories we'll be seeing in the next month.
Absolutely. When we come back, take a short break.
Don't worry. Take a month.
Next month. Don't worry.
Je, wajua? Dawa ya Bedlam ina uwezo wa kuua viwango vyote kutoka mayai hadi kunguni aliyekomaa. Je, wajua? Hakuna madhara ya kukaa chumbani baada ya kupuliza.
Bedlam imethibitishwa na shirika la afya duniani WHO kwa matumizi ya nyumbani. Kwa maelezo zaidi, wasiliana nasi kupitia nambari au tovuti yetu iliyo kwenye runinga yako. Tumia Bedlam 200 SL, uangamize kunguni kabisa.
Naitwa David Karaoke na run Red Petal Florist, yenye ni gifting shop. Tunadeliver maua na gifts all across the country. Nimeown hii game by ku make sure it's very simple for you ukitaka ku gift. Tuna make sure it's the easiest thing una order, tuna deliver. In the next few years nataka ku expand, nikaribie customers wetu huko mashinani, kuena branches kadhaa in major towns. But most importantly, just start, keep at it, endelea kuwa patient. Mwishowe lazima itajipa.
Hunter's Choice. Own your game.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this rehabilitation center.
Or you mean welcome to jail?
Well, yes. It may seem like that to you at first.
What, am I the only one?
Looks like I've been replaced by a new rebel. With a cause or without a cause?
Princess, I want to go with you.
No, relax. Don't worry. I'll just see you later.
You sure?
Of course. Charlie. Charlie, stop it.
Oh, there they are.
Ni rahisi, buy ama redeem na ushinde na furahia na Optiven.
All right. Welcome back. With all due respect, the Pandora leaks and the question on the media, a big problem. They've just sort of opened up and blew up in the studio for us. John, as is always, I start with you before I go back to the room. Of what has happened in the media, if you'd like, because everyone is asking on and like, look, the last 10 or so years, there has been Jubilee government that has managed the media in a bit more intense way than any other government has ever done. The media has lost business, so you see the question of the financials, then that becomes consideration of editorial, if you like. From where you sit, what would you say that's what has happened in the media in terms of what this government has done in the last 10 years? For what extent do you see that has to do with sort of the editorial questions and the editorial policy that you see being adapted from where you sit, as an observer, obviously, from outside?
Well, okay, I'll say this. Governments all around the world will always want to exert control over the media. It happens in the States. Look at the term that just ended of Donald Trump and how much he tried as much as possible to manage the messaging of the media to the extent that he excluded certain parts of the media and, coddled others, right? So governments all across the world will want to manage and want to control the media. And in that respect, the Jubilee government was no different, the Kibaki government was no different, and the Moi government before that was no different. I think what, and I guess maybe this is also with reflection, having been, part of the independent press, as it's called, for the past 6 years now. I think with reflection, one thing that the media, and I say this of legacy media, isn't doing enough of, because I know they're collaborating in certain places, is collaboration, right?
Right.
When there is an attack on the commercial interests, the legitimate commercial interests of the media, this is something that should concern the Royal Media Services, it should concern Nation Media Group, it should concern the Standard Group, even Media Max, right? Who should sit down together and say, no, look, we cannot take this line down, right? They did it during digital migration, albeit, for reasons best known to themselves. But it is a point where you must start to band together and circle the wagons and say, no, we cannot let this kind of attack be inflicted on our interests, because it harms the very material interests of our business, not just our profitability, but the fact that we won't be able to pay our employees on time. If for no other reason, let's do it for our employees. And that, I think, for me, is one opportunity that has gone begging again and again and again. That the Jubilee government has, through the government advertising agency, tried to squeeze the amount of money that goes to mainstream media houses is now an old story, unfortunately. Like I keep saying, the story will be in the response. The story will be in how the media responds to that kind of attack. You know, and Victor, there in studio with you, should be able to also give some sort of guidance from the point of view of the Media Council of Kenya about these kinds of attacks. I see the Media Council issuing statement after statement about threats against journalists, about attacks on journalists, attacks on media houses, which is great. There has to be some sort of clarion call for that. But we have to also now take it to the places where actual, you know, movement can take place in terms of policy, in terms of fighting back against these kinds of injustices, and that is the court, right?
Great.
Have we registered any sort of you know, claim in court about the commercial interests being harmed by the Jubilee government? Have we tried to go and actually ring fence the freedoms that the media is supposed to enjoy and try to grow that so that media houses or journalists who come after us do not have to fight the same fights that we are fighting today? That's a really important question. That we are all trying to take care of our own fiefdoms, you know, eventually what that does is that it demoralizes any sort of effort to go and try and fight for those freedoms. Ask any journalist who has done an access to information request over the past 10 years, what their experience has been, right? And they will tell you that it is incredibly difficult just to get that kind of information. Why? Not just because the structures in place and the people in place are preventing that from happening, but because they feel like there's nobody behind them trying to, you know, to back them. And even when their media house is behind them for things as important as an example of the SGR, because remember that was it was an interview that President Kenyatta held together with all media houses, right?
Yes.
Meaning that it was it was a subject of common interest to all media houses, a subject of public interest. Why has there been no concerted campaign or effort to be able to get those kinds of things, right? We might say commercial interests, but we'll say commercial interests until there is no commercial interest to defend. That's what I'm worried about.
Okay. Bwire.
I think sometimes it's just like when I read a number of things that people write about Kenya, and you wonder if you are in this country. What did the Reporters Without Borders report rate Kenya this year? We moved to number 92 or 100 and something. In fact, Ethiopia is rated ahead of us in press freedom. So there must be a reason. So to say some of these things we listen to is sometimes also to assume so many things. Again, look at the three acts that we mentioned, Article 33, 34, 35,
right,
that provide for media freedom, access to information. But in the same statutes, we still have nearly 22 laws that, prohibit that press freedom. So that they might not be like the KANU days where, in fact, the recent study that was done is that attacks or harassment of journalists not even by government itself, it's by editors, by media owners, by political activists, in terms of people who attack journalists.
Yeah.
That must also be, so those attacks are not there. I have sat even, I'm a representative on the GAA, the discussion we are having with in terms of rates and what, and I can tell you some of the stories people say outside about GAA and others are not true. And I can be on record because I see it there. But sometimes we use those things. We have presented the Kenya Media Sector Working Group. We have a Kenya Media Sector Working Group that has 23 organizations in this country. They have, including Media Council, Editors Guild, Kenya Union, and others, and they have worked on that. They made a presentation to BBI. I remember they have made a presentation to Parliament on the laws that need to be. In fact, the last was on 3rd of May in Serena, they presented the 22 laws that need to be urgently looked to the Speaker of the National Assembly at Serena, that's Honorable Muturi.
But it's their will.
That's what I'm telling you. So sometimes when people say nothing's being done, and we know there's a lot of people. In fact, the only thing now I know we might come, because again, looking at the parliamentary calendar and the elections and what, that is likely to come is one, either about the Media Council review, which has been, prioritized, but there are 22 laws. We still have the Books and Newspaper Act, so, but the people are working, Editors Guild and others, people have made presentation. So there's a lot of work that is being done by others, that when people say nothing is being done, I can tell you, every day we rarely miss to receive a case of a journalist who needs help. We keep journalists in safe houses, we do those things. All those things, those are things are done. But you must also appreciate the environment, and that's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges, and I can show you letters from the DPP, from wherever, is journalists themselves. Where you go as Media Council and other Kenya Union of Journalists, you get cases, a journalist has been harassed, you go to court, you have taken, the journalist has gone and agreed with the oppressor, and they have agreed, they disappear, they don't come to court. It's a frustration also some of us. So when we hear people saying that nothing is being done, sometimes you also get depressed.
Gathara, I need to close. I need to go ahead and close.
I'm always getting the short end of the stick.
No, you're getting the longest of the shit. Here's the thing. From where you sit, what needs to be done to improve? Obviously, there's a problem. Obviously, there's all these questions of interest and the law and things that need to be fixed. But from where you sit, what needs to be fixed? For those who are watching tonight and frustrated perhaps by the media in general, mainstream media in particular, what needs to be fixed?
Well, I think there's I point out 2 or 3 issues. The first, I think, is the culture within the newsroom. I think we need to get more professionals, more experience in there. I think as a media, one of the problems and one of the mistakes we did is to promote people out of the newsroom and into the boardroom. So we've got journalists, experienced journalists, but they are running newspapers, not writing for them. They're not managing the coverage of stories. They're managing how their companies are doing, how they are profitable, etc., which are 2 different considerations. So we need to rethink how we are getting people the sort of institutional memory and experience, and how do we keep it within the newsroom. For me, that would be one of the more important things that we could do. The second thing, I think, is to go back to the ethics of things. And I'm not just talking about ethics in the case of Pandora's box, but generally how we cover things. What are our obligations as a press?
Right.
Who do we owe a duty to? And I think for a lot of what we put out, journalism has become almost like a production floor. Stories come very quickly, get them out, get them onto the page.
But here's the question, as you answer this question. How do you balance the business interest, which is what we were talking about, that it's a business in the first place, it needs to make money. How do we answer and fix that, as also we talk about the public interest?
And this is where the ethics helps you with it. When journalism started, it used to be the product they were selling was the news, was what they wrote. But very quickly they discovered there are people called advertisers. And what they started doing is to sell an audience rather than sell the news. And I think we are coming back to a situation where media has to go back and to look at what it is producing, its product. If you look at around the world, which are the more profitable institutions, news institutions, people like the New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, the guys who are actually starting to make money, are people who are actually focused on the product.
I'm not cutting you. I'm just going to add that New York Times, Washington Post, and the rest of the West, they have media backers, foundation.
No, actually, what's happening, like for example, if you look at the New York Times, is they have gone back to a focus on their subscription model. And what they're saying is, for them, the important story is the story that generates subscriptions, that tells people what they want to hear, which means you're focusing on the news that you're producing. Not just on how the audience you can generate with it. And I think for us, we need to go back and ask the value of the news that we are putting out. If you take out your front pages today and you compare them around the week, pretty much saying the same thing. What is the value that you're putting in there? When you're asking people to pay for it, what value are you giving them such that they will pay. This soap opera of politics that we are giving out, I think it's kind of run its shelf life.
Okay, John, 45 seconds if you like, I go around the room and get closing remarks. What are the questions that have gone unanswered on the Pandora leaks, with all due respect?
Well, the key question that we've been asking, why the secrecy? I'm seeing that speaking on the sidelines of the United Nations Security Council today, President Kenyatta was asked about the leaks, and he said, first of all, my name isn't there. You know, we're not asking about whether your name is there or not, or whether you have accounts, or whether it's illegal or not. It is about the secrecy. That is really the question. That is the crux of the issue. It is not about whether you have an account or whether, you know, or whether your family owns X amount of, you know, assets. Why use that infrastructure that is very, very secretive,
right?
You know, to be able to own property. And I mean, there's lots of follow-ups after that, including what does it say as an endorsement of your country's economy when your family, as well as yourself, are mentioned in the Pandora Papers leaks. That for me is the core question. And you know, we can talk until the cows come home, but that question about secrecy is one that should bother us all.
Yes.
You know, but somehow it doesn't seem to.
Doesn't seem to bulb up.
You know,
45 seconds or less.
One, I also have university secretary in some island in Uganda, you know, so in Lolo Island. So, but anyway, away from that, the thing is that we must appreciate the society in which we live in. Media is part of the society in which we live in. So if we are living in a society where the churches, everybody is secret with everything, then that continues to be a problem. I mean, because even the people we are talking about, even locally, how many of us have, I have a wealth declaration form, I'm a public officer, nobody has ever come for that public form. So sometimes we say that it's a secret, that people have hidden it, but people sometimes don't come for this thing.
But it is hidden, it's
hidden by law.
It's hidden by law.
It's not hidden by law.
It is actually by law, and you can be jailed for 5 years if you actually get somebody's wealth declaration and you reveal it. That is the law. The law says.
Which law?
You know, the law that requires you, the Public Officer Ethics Act. Go check it out. You know, and that's my point. Is we need to look at that law.
But what I was saying,
you know, what we are doing is we're giving with one hand and taking with the other. We are saying that we have openness, transparency. People will do wealth declarations, and then we hide them. So the thing is, we defeat the purpose of it, and I think Pandora Papers should be the impetus for us to go back and ask, why is the law the way it is?
If the government can remove taxes on media-related products, newsprints and the rest to make media business a bit okay, it will help some of these problems.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Victor Bwire, Director at the Media Council of Kenya, Patrick Gathara, Curator at The Elephant, and of course, John-Allan Namu, co-founder, Africa Uncensored. You've all done very well. Thank you very much for coming to the program. To play us out tonight is none other but the wonderful Brian Sigu. Not everything is terrible in this country. We can have some light moments. And that's the point, with all due respect. Play us out.
Ya mama ya Minye donda godiambo Biro mosmos Kakunye usigu Abiro mayo Wajalongi ginyingi nyako Solo mama ya Avino kalando Unde na duoko kabisi Mama ya duok dala Aworo ya Era chanda malit nango, era chanda kasibu, awara pi. Era runda ya era goto koda e bombe, era chanda nango. again. Biro nalandore ti. Molololo minwayo. Biro nalando kawuono yawa. Kodi. Kodi ae.